All right, so I just want to thank you guys for being with us here for our chamber chat about the change of the form of government. We have Kaya Marienfeld with us, who is a lawyer in town and very knowledgeable on the subject. She's done a lot of research. We also have Curtis Wells with us, a council person who can shed a lot of light on the subject. And our biggest goal here is just to understand a little bit better what is going to be on the ballot for our voters. And then what those options mean for them. And so we've gone through kind of a lot to get us to this point. And so we're going to turn the time over to Curtis just a little bit. I'm going to ask you about the background of what brought us to this point. Why do we need a change of government, and kind of what brought us these options? Can you bring us up to speed?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Lacey. So, just some history for starters. Grand County changed from a 3-member commission to a 7-member optional form that was titled a council in 1992. That form remained in place until this year. And one of the interesting things that kind of led to House Bill 224 was the state legislature kind of revised their 4 forms of government that they give the counties options to choose. And when they did that in 2001, they did not include the optional form that Grand County had changed to in 1992, although we were grandfathered in. And so Grand County's been operating, in that optional form that's not in current statute since 2001. And prior to HB 224, there was a lot of discussion about county form of government and a lot of different interests and issues from different sizes of counties in the state. And, one of the issues that I had was that I had discovered firsthand as a county and as a city, but in this case, a county, as you operate, the statutory guidance and guidelines and instructions of how you do certain things, for instance, like adopting a tentative budget, it's laid out by the form of government that you are. And Grand County not being, recognized in current statute kind of put us in some gray area where you were having to kind of get interpretations from the county attorney's office to do, in my opinion, some basic things. And so House Bill 224 wasn't originated to mandate conformity with Grand County's form of government, but that was one of the provisions of the bill. And there was one other county that was operating under an optional form. And so House Bill 224 essentially laid out that the counties that are non-conforming have a certain amount of time to become conforming and to choose a new form of government, or become a new form of government that is conforming with statute. And it was a pretty heated, divisive issue, as form of government issues often are. And so there was originally kind of a citizen-initiated process that was in some way kind of competing with a county-initiated process. In statute, the state gives counties the option to amend or change their form of governments either through citizen-initiated petitions or certain amendments through the county legislative body. So the county created a citizen study committee, and they met and formed a recommendation. One of the mechanisms of HB 224 that's gotten a lot of attention is there had to be if it's a mandate, there had to be at some point if Grand County, either the citizens or the legislative body cannot create conformity with their form of government, then the legislature included in the law that we would automatically revert back to a 3-member commission, which is considered the standard form. That's the form of government that's still the most commonly used in the state of Utah. And, prior to our original change in 1992, only having 3 members of the legislative body in a diverse community sometimes was concerning, to the local citizens due to just a small quorum. 2 members of a 3-member body, constitute a quorum, and so having an expanded board was really a goal of that original change. And so earlier this year we were faced with having a recommendation by the study committee, an option that's still on the ballot, which is a 5-member council manager form. And that form is different from the form that we were and that we are now, in that it takes executive authority away from the elected representatives of the people. And so you may want to get into this in subsequent questions, but essentially, this legislation from the state of Utah that's wanting to kind of clean up and create conformity with all of the counties and their form of governments and kind of keep things clean and conforming is what brought us to this point. That's all I'll add for the history.
Perfect. So that does bring us then to the ballot. So on the ballot, they're going to see, if I understand this right, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to see 3 questions that are all pertaining to this topic. The first is Prop 10, and that one, Kaya, if you can just kind of just tell us what that is rather than me hoping I get it right, that would be great. Prop 10, explain Prop 10, what that means, what yes means, what no means. Yeah,
definitely. So, as Curtis just explained, kind of laying the history out, anything, the county council at that time did put together a committee that went through a process of meetings and all of that to figure out what they thought would be the form of government that they would like to recommend to be on the ballot. So that is what Proposition 10 is the form of government that study committee essentially wants to see happen. So that the wording is, shall the voters adopt the alternate form of government known as the council manager form pursuant to the optional plan for Grand County government that the study committee has recommended. So that means, shall the voters approve Proposition 10, the study committee recommended plan, we would end up with a 5-person council with all seats selected at large. So like Curtis's seat right now on the commission, he is one of our at-large representatives, meaning that everyone in Grand County votes for that seat. Currently, we have a mix of districts in at-large, but this would change our form of government to be all at-large seats, and it would make it a council form, an actual council form, as is defined by statute, which is not what we've been calling a council form since 1992 in Grand County, which is, I think, where it gets a little confusing. We have had, since we put our current form of government in place in 1992, we've had a commission form in effect, but it's been called a council just because that's what it was initially called. But I think the big difference that's really important between a council form and a commission form is, in a commission, both executive and legislative powers are held by, as Curtis said, elected representatives, in this case, the commission. In a proper council form, the legislative authority is held by the elected members of the council, but executive authority is vested in an unelected council manager, or an elected county manager in this case, which would mean that the legislative body would select someone else who would hold executive authority. And they would still have some oversight over that executive position, but certainly not in the way that the commission now has over this county manager position, or the person who runs sort of those more executive functions, where they can have sort of those smaller day-to-day tweaks, and that power is directly delegated, but the the commission still holds on to both legislative and executive power. And I think Curtis said it well, where the main difference is really, you have your executive function in someone who's unelected, even though they're selected by our elected representatives, or your executive function, all held by people that are all elected. And that's the big difference now. So voting yes on Proposition 10 would actually put us as a real council for the first time, where it would have that split of legislative and executive authority away from the elected body. Whereas now we're a commission. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can I break in with just, so basically, if I'm understanding it right, a council or a vote for yes on Prop 10 would kind of move us more to like the city government form, right?
Correct.
Got the council, we've got the city manager.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Exactly. Actually, that's the best way to explain it, I think, is that Proposition 10, the study committee has recommended the form of government we have in Moab City. That's the way that Moab City is run. We have that executive authority vested in an unelected but a hired person who's, Joel Linares in this case in the city, who's competent and qualified and does a great job, but the council themselves don't hold on to some of the powers that are given to that city manager. Whereas in our commission form now, the commission has kind of all of the oversight and all of those powers, even though they don't have to deal with the day-to-day. And, if the various propositions fail, we remain with what we have now, which is that 7-member mix of districts and at-large commission. And they will still have a county manager for sort of running the day-to-day functions. It's just all about where that actual power and oversight vests. So Prop 10 would put us exactly in the same position that we have with Moab City, which is the 5-member council, all at large, with an executive power in that county manager. So.
So if you vote yes on Prop 10, it's the 5-person council, all at large, with the executive power with the manager. If you vote
Correct.
no, then there are other options, right?
Correct. Yeah, Prop 10 is it's the gatekeeper on the ballot as far as all the propositions go. So whether Prop 10 fails or succeeds determines whether Propositions 16 and 17 actually even matter. So if Prop 10 passes, 16 and 17 are moot because they only matter. They can only come into existence if Prop 10 fails. Because the study committee has recommended that form of government, citizens essentially need to vote it up or down first before the other options are open to them, including, again, keeping what we have now. So yeah, exactly.
And is this something, I don't know if either of you.
One of the.
Okay. Go ahead, Curtis.
Sorry, one of the pieces that I kind of stopped short on the history that is the newer development, and I have mentioned really briefly that the council form that we've been operating under since 1992 by definition was a commission form because the legislative body retained the executive authority. There was kind of some soft language in there that strongly recommended that executive responsibilities be delegated to staff. And so where I was explaining previously post HB 224, there's a recommendation to endorse and accept the recommended form of government by the study committee. If the community votes that down and voted no on Prop 10, we would automatically revert to the 3-member commission. And this is one of the biggest kind of evolutions in the process that I think is really, win-win for everybody. Is the other form that received serious consideration by the study committee was the 5-member commission form, which is essentially referred to as an expanded commission. And by acknowledging that, we had been operating as kind of a, some form of optional expanded commission, and those amendments to the county plan that the county legislative body made, weeks ago, has created conformity with our county plan. And so the good news is that if the citizens vote no on Prop 10, instead of reverting to a 3-member commission, we will retain our existing form, which is an expanded commission. And that's kind of one of the pieces that's kind of added some, some complexity, that I think folks could really use some, there's opportunities to clarify on that. And there, that strong, the soft language in the original county plan that recommended the delegation of executive authority, that's been amended so that it kind of, those soft boundaries are taken away, so that not only in what we're calling it as a commission, but it also is kind of defined more as a commission. Many commissions do, decide to hire county administrative folks and managers, but those commissioners still retain the executive authority, and that's a big part of this.
Yeah, I think that for sure, that's really important. I think that's why things maybe have certainly been confusing with the addition 17 and with the commission's recent, self-amendment of our form of government to make those small changes state law, while kind of keeping the bones and the meat of what, our existing form of government is, so that is what we can, or we would revert to if Proposition 10 doesn't pass. So I think that's super. Reverting to a 3-person commission, we now would fall back on what we have now, which is the 7-member of districts and at-large seats, again, with executive and legislative power retained by the council themselves, or excuse me, commission. I'm still learning to call it something different too.
All right. Okay, so I think that covers it really well. One question that I had while we were talking, and I don't know if either of you can speak to this or not, but this study committee that came to this 5-person council all at large, I think I remember seeing that they were asking for input from the community and whatnot during that process. Do you know, maybe Curtis, maybe how much that was taken into account? Was there kind of like an overwhelming opinion there or not? Do you know what I'm getting at there? I'm not sure where.
Yeah, I'll answer very delicately because I don't want to speak, for the study committee. I know there was a mix of, reactions, and there was input taken from both other elected officials and staff, inside the county. I know one of the things that was, quoted and messaged was that the county staff liked having some kind of go-between, between them and the council. One of the concerns that I had with that was that those opportunities to have a administrative support, still exist with the commission. So I was concerned that line was kind of drawn inappropriately. And I also think the expanded commission, in my experience, when folks kind of talk about council versus commission, there's always this kind of assumption that you're referring to a larger board and a smaller board, meaning like a 3-member commission or a larger board, which is a council. And there wasn't enough of a delineation between an expanded commission, and a council that also has a broader board, 5 to 7 members. And so, there's quite a bit of complexity there, and my understanding is that there was a, kind of a, there was some, varying responses that they had gotten from different segments of the community, including, other elected officials and, and staff from inside the institution.
Okay.
I know that I was on KZMU last week talking with Walt Dabney, was the other guest on Howard Trenholm's This Week in Moab show. We were talking about Prop 10 specifically, and Walt was on the study committee. And exactly what he said, I don't remember the specifics, but preferences, I think that based on the committee got back, and you can look at their votes, like for example, the council manager form only won the day. With the study committee, it was a 4-3. Like everyone was in favor of something and everyone, was all on board. I think there was a lot of variation within the study committee and certainly a lot of variation in response, but I think how things came margins were that, by and large, folks favored some form of what we have now, which was the larger, more members on whatever the elected body districts involved in some way. I think were the responses to the vote. Initially was considering a mix of districts and at large again, but then that kind of got scrapped at the last minute because the study committee themselves, I think, were told that they couldn't legally draw those boundaries of the new districts that they were proposing. State statute sets out really clearly how districts are drawn, and it's by, the elected body, obviously with judicial oversight and everything to make sure that it's constitutional. But, they draw those districts, and we didn't end up with districts at the end of the day as far as their recommendation went. So, and Curtis, feel free to correct me if anything I've said is incorrect.
All right.
No, and just like just a brief summary, to more directly answer your question, Lacey, on Prop 10 is a yes vote is a vote for a 5-member council with an appointed manager. A no vote is the selection of a commission form. And then there's a proposition down the ballot that would give voters, if they vote no on Prop 10, the opportunity to reduce the number of seats from 7 to 5.
Okay, so
that was an issue in the amendments to the county plan that we're not able to amend the number of membership as a legislative body. That's for the voters.
Okay. So a vote no then brings us down to whether you want 7 commission, 5 commission, and then we've also added at large or districts. There's kind of all of these little, options here. I've got a flow chart that I think maybe I'll share on my screen here in just a minute, but Kaya, can you tell us maybe, so the next step down, so we vote, so if they don't vote yes for the council, the 5-person council, they vote no, they will also have these other questions. Prop 16 is the first. Can you talk to us about Prop 16?
Yeah, correct. So I'll do what I did with Prop 10. The exact language on the ballot is, shall the Grand County Plan for Government be amended to change the composition of the commission from 7 members to 5? So this would say, okay, as Curtis said, we said no to Prop 10, so no 5-member council with all seats at large. It's presumed, so then the baseline becomes, okay, now we can change slightly in one of these 2 ways. So Proposition 16, if you vote yes on Proposition 16, that would reduce the number of seats on that commission from 7, which we have now, to 5. So that's really it. So if you want a 7-person commission in any form, vote no for Proposition 16. If you want a 5-person commission in any form, vote yes on Proposition 16 is really the easiest way to say that. And that flow chart shows it exactly right. I think this is the easiest way to do it, actually, is sort of look at that column on the right and say, hey, what do I like? And then you can sort of see the path on the various propositions.
Right. Okay, so if they vote yes, they want 5-person, then they have another option there of whether they want them all at large or 3 districts. Is that correct?
And that's actually if you vote yes or no on Proposition 16. So say you want to keep 7 people on the commission, you vote no on Proposition 16. But you do want all of the seats to be at large, you would vote yes on Proposition 17, or vice versa. If you want 5-person commission, but a mix of at large and districts like we have now.
Okay, so Prop 16 has to do with the number And
Correct.
then Prop 17 is whether they are all at large or districts.
Yeah, yeah. So it will never be all districts. That's not something that is on the ballot because it's not
Right.
something we have now. So this would be either all at large, meaning that every citizen everywhere in Grand County votes on exactly the same slate of candidates for exactly the same number of commissioners in every election where there's a commission seat on the ballot, or a mix like we have now where we'd have 5 districts if it's still a 7-person commission, or 3 districts if it reduces to a 5-person commission after Proposition 16, which would be a majority of the districts, a majority of the seats would be at large, a majority of the seats would be districts. So 5 districts or 3 districts, depending on the overall numbers. And then a minority of those seats would be at large, like we have now. So elected by everyone. So yeah, it's really, there are people who prefer all at large, folks who prefer the mix of at large and districts like we have now. Differently about the number of seats. And so all of that, there's sort of a choose your own adventure kind of makeup on the ballot this year. So, I think that flow chart's really helpful because it shows what the possible outcomes are of those various ballot propositions. So notice that the very bottom outcome in the right column, which would be no on Prop 10, is the gatekeeping proposition, no on Prop 16 and no on Prop 17, leaves us with what we have now, which is a 7-person commission with 5 districts and 2 at-large seats. And then it kind of scales back from there, depending on yes or no on the other 2. It's
so everybody watching this, if you will look at this chart, and we'll actually share this chart as well, but just take a look at the right-hand column. You decide what form of government you want there, and then you can trace back to how you need to vote to get to there. All right, Curtis, do you have anything to add to the information on those?
Oh, I don't think so. Kai's done a good job at summarizing this. I think that flow chart, that we're discussing and that you're going to circulate is the most concise, easy to understand, kind of roadmap, for this form of government issue as it kind of comes to a head here. And, 2 choices for folks that, I think are 2 good choices. And so I think as we're kind of entering into this final phase of, of turning this over to the citizens, I look forward to the result.
Right. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this here for a minute. But, all right, well, I think that you guys have been really helpful for me in understanding it. So hopefully everybody else got some clarification as well. And I'll share this flow chart, which is super helpful. If there's anything else that you guys have to add, you can speak up now. And then if you guys want to maybe each just let people know how they can get a hold of you if they have questions, or everyone can always go through the chamber as well. You can ask your questions to me and I can find out the answers. But if you guys will just give a little information on how they can reach you for questions.
Yeah, you bet. I'm always open to questions and comments at cwells@grandcountyutah.net. Happy to discuss this issue or other issues. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, and same. My email is not as easily parroted as Curtis's, but it's just my first initial K and then last name Marienfeld, which is MARIENFELD @gmail.com. That's my personal address, not associated with work or any local government stuff. So that's probably the best one for this. But yeah, I'm happy this is something that I have thought and researched and given a lot of sort of personal time and energy to out all the different things that can happen and how people can get engaged and involved in figuring out what they want our form of government to be or remain, as it were. But yeah, I think that's really it. One real quick thing to add, there are some things that aren't on the ballot, which obviously come into people's minds. I think the current makeup of districts is something that obviously is not on the ballot this time, but it's worth noting that, we're in a census year right now. So if Grand County after this election does remain with a mix of districts and at-large seats, those districts will be redrawn within the next couple of years, as is required by law, following the census results from this year. So, that's something to keep in mind too. I certainly know a lot of folks who like or don't like the current way districts are drawn, but I think probably maybe that realizing they're going to be redrawn should be a smaller part of that decision. It's kind of whether you like districts, period, not whether you like districts as they're drawn now. And the same with at large. If you like at large, that doesn't depend on those districts at all. So,
Right.
So go for it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time. I know you're both busy, and just thank you from the chamber for all of your information and helping us get it out there to our members.
Yeah, thanks, Lacey. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Lacey. Thanks, Kaya.
Yeah, thanks, Curtis. Good to see you.
Have a good one, guys.
All right,
Bye.
thanks.